My name is Eleanor Hart, and for more than 70 years, this lodge has been my refuge, my pride, and my proof that a woman can build something solid out of love and sweat. Tonight, on Christmas Eve, it became the stage for my deepest humiliation. The room was glowing with strings of white lights, the scent of pine and roasted ham wrapping around us. I had set the table myself that morning, polishing the old silver Richard and I had received on our wedding day. Family was supposed to fill these walls with warmth. Instead, I felt a chill crawl down my back as my son rose from his chair and claimed the head of the table, as if I were already gone. "Nathan," I said softly, my hand resting on the arm of the chair that had always been mine since his father's passing. "That place is not for you." His eyes didn't blink. He glanced at his wife, Sloane, who gave the smallest nod. And then, without hesitation, he pushed me aside. My legs slipped. I fell hard against the wooden floor. The crack of the china plate I had been carrying rang louder than any carol playing in the background. For a heartbeat, the room froze. I looked up from the ground and saw the expression on my grandson's face, his fork hanging in midair. My granddaughter, Lily, had her phone in her hand. She had been filming the evening for a holiday vlog. Her gasp turned into silence as she captured every detail: my body on the floor, my son towering above me, and the cold words that followed. "This house belongs to my mother-in-law now," Sloane whispered just loud enough for the room to hear. "Get out, Eleanor." The sting of betrayal burned hotter than the pain in my hip. I had raised Nathan in these walls, taught him how to lay bricks with his father, how to sign his first paycheck. And here I was, sprawled on the ground, dismissed like an unwanted guest. I forced myself to sit up, my palms pressed against the floor that had carried the footsteps of 3 generations. My voice trembled, but I managed to speak. "You may think this house belongs to someone else, but you've forgotten the foundation it was built on." No one moved. No one spoke. Only the camera in Lily's hands kept recording, silent but merciless, etching this moment into something that could never be erased. I did not know it then, but that single recording would become my weapon, my shield, and the spark that turned a Christmas humiliation into the fiercest battle of my life. The pain in my hip lingered through the night, but it was nothing compared to the hollow ache in my chest. I spent the rest of that Christmas Eve sitting in the kitchen, away from the glowing tree and the soft carols still playing. The caterers moved quietly, clearing plates and wiping counters, pretending not to have seen what had happened. Their eyes told me otherwise. They would remember. Everyone in that room would. I washed a single glass with trembling hands, the water running hotter than my skin. My reflection in the window looked older than I remembered, as if the years had rushed onto my face all at once. When I finally went upstairs, the house no longer felt like mine. Every creak of the stairs, every framed photograph of Richard on the wall seemed to belong to strangers. Sleep didn't come. I lay awake, hearing the faint murmur of Nathan's voice in the study down the hall. Sloane was with him, her tone sharp, decisive. I caught a fragment when the door opened for a second, something about board support and looking decisive tonight. Then the door clicked shut. By morning, the bruise on my hip had darkened, and my grandson Ben pressed an ice pack against it with his small hands. "Grandma," he whispered, "are you okay?" I managed a smile for him. At 12, he deserved Christmas joy. Not this. Lily hovered in the doorway, her phone clutched to her chest. Her eyes were wide with guilt. "Grandma," she said softly, "I filmed everything. I didn't mean to. I swear. I was just making a video for my friends. But it's all there." Her voice cracked, and tears welled in her eyes. I reached for her hand. "You did nothing wrong, sweetheart. That video is proof, not shame. Keep it safe." She nodded, relief mingling with fear, and promised to back it up immediately. An hour later, as snow fell outside in thick, silent sheets, an email arrived on my tablet. It was from the company's finance office, though I knew whose hand was behind it. Effective immediately, all discretionary spending accounts tied to my name were suspended pending review. In plain words, Nathan had cut me off. I stared at the screen, feeling both fury and clarity settle over me. He thought he could erase me, just as Sloane had whispered. But he had forgotten the one clause Richard had insisted on when we drafted the family shareholder agreement all those years ago. Richard had called it a safeguard, a poison pill. If I were ever publicly humiliated or assaulted by an heir, with proof undeniable, the widow of the founder would have the right to seize controlling interest for the symbolic price of a single dollar. I picked up the phone and called Peter Caldwell, the family's attorney. His gravelly voice answered, steady as ever. "Eleanor, I heard something happened last night. What's going on?" I told him everything. My fall, the shove, the words that still rang in my ears. Then I told him about the video. Silence stretched. Then Peter cleared his throat. "If what you're saying is on tape, that clause can be enforced. But Eleanor, you need resources. Nathan holds the lines of credit. The moment you move, he'll choke off the cash flow. You'll need a bridge." The truth of it pressed down on me. Without money, without leverage, the clause was just words on paper. I looked out the window, where Ben was tossing snow into the air, laughing as it landed on his hair. I thought of Lily, still shaken, carrying the weight of a video that could tear her family apart. Something inside me hardened. I would not let my children, or their children, live under the shadow of arrogance and betrayal. If Nathan wanted to strip me of dignity, I would remind him who laid the first brick of Heartstone builders. "I'll find the bridge, Peter," I said. My voice did not tremble this time. "You just make sure that clause is ready." As I ended the call, the bruise on my hip throbbed with every heartbeat, but the ache was no longer just pain. It was a reminder, a warning. The battle had begun, and I was not going to lose. The morning after Christmas carried no joy. The snow outside lay heavy, the kind that muffles the world into silence. But inside my chest, the noise was deafening. Every step I took through the lodge reminded me of Richard, of the life we had built, of the family dinners that used to be filled with laughter instead of whispers and cold stares. Now, those walls echoed only with doubt. Nathan had moved fast. By noon, word reached me through a sympathetic accountant on staff. He was already positioning himself as the strong, decisive leader the company needed, and my emotional instability was being quietly circulated among board members. The sting of betrayal cut deeper when I learned it was Lorraine, Sloane's mother, who was spreading that rumor. She had called several directors, hinting that I was losing touch and needed to step aside before embarrassing the family. I refused to sit idle. I put on my heaviest coat and drove into Denver to meet with Summit First Bank. My hip ached as I walked across the marble lobby, but I ignored it. The banker, a young man no older than my granddaughter, smiled politely as he explained the terms of my rejection. My request for a bridge line of credit had been flagged by the company's CFO, Nathan's man. The words came wrapped in corporate courtesy, but the meaning was sharp and final. Without Nathan's approval, no bank in this city would lend me a dime. I thanked the banker, shook his hand, and walked back into the snow. Humiliation tried to claw at me, but I would not let it win. If Nathan thought locking the doors of every bank could stop me, He had forgotten that his mother had fought her way through tougher barricades than a denied loan. That night, I sat by the fireplace with Lily. She pressed her knees to her chest, staring at the flames, her phone glowing in her hands. "Grandma," she whispered, "what's going to happen to us?" I brushed a strand of hair from her face. "We're going to be fine, sweetheart. That video you have, it's not just proof, it's power. But power needs allies." The next morning, I called Peter again. "There's one man who might help," he said cautiously. "But Eleanor, he's not a saint. Victor Ames." I knew the name. Everyone in construction did. Victor had been Richard's fiercest rival 30 years ago, a man with a reputation for ruthlessness and precision. They had crossed swords in bids and lawsuits, each trying to outmaneuver the other. To reach out to him now felt like inviting the fox into the hen house, but desperation has a way of blurring lines. We met at a small cafe in Cherry Creek. The snow was still piled on the sidewalks, and Victor arrived in a charcoal coat, his silver hair combed neatly, eyes sharp as a hawk's. He didn't bother with small talk. "I heard your son put on quite the show," he said, sipping black coffee. "And I hear there's a video." "There is," I answered, steady. "And there's a clause in the shareholder agreement that will hand me his shares for $1 if I enforce it." Victor leaned back, the corner of his mouth twitching into something between a smirk and respect. "Interesting. You'll need capital, lawyers, a media shield, and you know very well, Eleanor, those things aren't free. I'm offering 40% of my controlling interest after I trigger the clause," I said, my voice firm. "You'll get a seat at the table, but not the throne." For the first time, his expression softened. He tapped a finger against the table. "You always did have steel in your spine. Fine, I'll fund the fight, but on one condition. You don't use this to destroy your son in public. You win the boardroom, not the tabloids." I looked at him for a long moment. The fire in his eyes was still there, tempered now by years and scars. "I don't want revenge," I said quietly. "I want dignity. I want peace for my grandchildren." Victor raised his cup. "Then we have a deal." As I walked back to my car, a strange calm settled over me. I had made a pact with the devil. Yes, but a devil who respected rules. Nathan had shut the doors of the banks, but I had opened a different door, one that led straight to the battlefield he never saw coming. The snow crunched under my boots, each step deliberate. I could almost hear Richard's voice in the back of my mind. "Eleanor, when they push you down, you stand taller." For the first time since Christmas Eve, I felt taller than my pain. On the morning of December 27th, I woke before dawn. The air in the lodge was brittle and cold, the kind that seeps through wooden walls no matter how hard the fire crackles. My hips still pulsed with pain, but I welcomed it. Pain reminded me I was alive, reminded me what was at stake. Peter arrived just after sunrise, carrying a stack of papers under his arm and the smell of stale coffee on his coat. We spread the documents across the dining table, the same table where my son had pushed me aside 3 nights earlier. The contrast wasn't lost on me. "This is the draft," Peter said, tapping his finger on the resolution. "Notice of an emergency board meeting, scheduled for December 30th at 10 a.m. The purpose? Review of leadership conduct and shareholder enforcement." The words were cold and clinical, but I felt the weight of them. This was no longer just a family dispute, it was war, bound by signatures and sealed in law. We went over every line. The clause Richard had built into the agreement, his final safeguard, was clear. If the widow of the founder suffered humiliation or assault by an heir, and proof was beyond dispute, she had the right to purchase controlling shares for $1. My name, my signature, would set it all in motion. I signed the notice with a steady hand. Peter gathered the pages into a manila folder. I'll circulate this through DocuSign today. Every director will receive it. They'll have no choice but to attend. After he left, I wrapped my scarf around my neck and drove with Lily to the precinct in Boulder. The building was plain brick, unremarkable. Yet the moment I stepped inside, I felt the gravity of it. We weren't here to press charges. Not yet. We were here to establish a record, a footprint in the system that Nathan couldn't erase. The officer at the desk was kind, professional. I told him the truth. Lily handed over her phone, showing the video. He logged it into the report, assigning a case number, and handed me a copy. "If you need to escalate," he said, "this will be on file." I thanked him, and we walked back into the icy air. Lily clutched the report like a lifeline. I squeezed her hand. "You did good, sweetheart. This isn't just about me. It's about you and your brother, too." That evening, the counterattack came. Lorraine was never one to sit quietly, and she had resources of her own. By nightfall, a confidential memo had circulated among the board, painting me as fragile, unstable, a grieving widow who had lost her grip. The phrasing was deliberate. I was beloved but in decline, someone to be protected rather than trusted. It was an insult dressed in silk. Sloane added her own cruelty. A text meant for Nathan flashed briefly on Lily's phone when she borrowed it to check the Wi-Fi. "She needs a guardian, not a board seat." The words burned hotter than any rumor. I sat by the fireplace, staring at the flames. The children had gone upstairs. The lodge was quiet. In that silence, I reached for Richard's old recorder, the one he used to dictate notes. I pressed the button and spoke, my voice low and even. "The wedding band feels colder than my son's eyes did when he pushed me. He has forgotten who built the walls around him, who gave him the table he now claims as his own. But I will not forget, and I will not surrender." The words trembled only at the edges. Speaking them out loud gave them shape, gave them strength. I closed the recorder and leaned back, letting the crackle of the fire fill the room. Outside, the wind howled against the windows, but inside me, the storm had settled into a sharp calm. Nathan had his allies, his mother-in-law's whispers, his PR machine, but I had something stronger. I had truth, I had law, and now I had Victor's backing. 3 nights ago, I was sprawled on the floor, humiliated. Tonight, I was preparing to walk into the boardroom with every weapon Richard had left me. The battle lines were drawn. There was no turning back. December 30th arrived with skies the color of steel. I dressed in black wool, not as mourning, but as armor. My hands didn't shake as I buttoned my coat. For 3 days, I had carried bruises on my hip and whispers in my ear. But now I carried proof. The elevator ride to the 18th floor of Hartstone Tower was silent except for the hum of machinery. When the doors opened, the boardroom stretched before me, long oak table gleaming under recessed lights. At the far end sat Nathan, shoulders squared, chin high. Sloane hovered behind him like a shadow. Lorraine sat among the guests, her smile tight, eyes sharp. Marjorie Kane, the independent director, called the meeting to order. Her voice was steady, practiced. "The matter before us is conduct unbecoming of the CEO. Evidence has been submitted. Both sides will be heard." Nathan's attorney rose first, polished and confident. "The video in question is unreliable. It is a fragment, taken out of context, a family disagreement, not an assault. To use it as grounds for removing a sitting CEO would set a dangerous precedent." I let him finish. Then Peter, my attorney, stood. He connected his laptop to the projector, and the room dimmed as the video began to play. The footage was unflinching. My son's hand shoving me, my body collapsing to the floor, the sound of glass shattering. Then Sloane's voice, clear as a bell. "This house belongs to my mother-in-law. Get out!" No one spoke. The silence was broken only by the hum of the projector. Peter clicked again, displaying metadata. Timestamp, location, file integrity verified. He called the 2 caterers as witnesses. Their statements matched the footage. Then he laid down the police report, stamped and signed. "This is not rumor," he said. "This is fact." Nathan shifted in his chair, his jaw tight, eyes flicking to the board members who suddenly would not meet his gaze. Lorraine leaned forward as if to intervene, but no words came. I reached into my purse and drew out a single $1 bill, folded, crisp, and deliberate. I placed it on the table before me. My voice carried, calm but unyielding. Under Section 7, Clause 3 of the Hearthstone Shareholder Agreement, I invoke my right as widow of the founder, in light of this public humiliation, with evidence presented and undisputed. I exercise my option to purchase 51% of the CEO's shares for the price of $1. The words hung in the air like thunder. Marjorie cleared her throat. "The clause is valid. The evidence meets the threshold. The transfer is effective immediately." I looked at my son then. His face had gone pale, his lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment, I saw not the man who betrayed me, but the boy who once built toy houses beside Richard's workbench. My heart ached, but I did not waver. "This isn't about revenge, Nathan," I said softly. "It's about dignity, and you've left me no choice." The pen scratched across the paper. The $1 bill slid forward, and just like that, the power he had clung to slipped away. January 10th dawned clear and sharp, the kind of Colorado winter morning where the mountains look close enough to touch. By then, the dust had settled. The board had accepted the transfer. Nathan and Sloane had packed their things and vanished from the lodge without a word. Lorraine, ever the strategist, withdrew into silence, her carefully polished image cracked beyond repair. I stood in the study one last time, surrounded by shelves of Richard's books and the faint scent of cedar. Papers were stacked neatly on the desk, the agreement with Victor Ames, signed and sealed. 40% of my shares now belonged to him, ensuring the company had the capital to survive. 10% I kept in trust, the Hart Family Fund, for Lily and Ben's future. The rest I released, along with the weight that had crushed my heart since Christmas Eve. The lodge was no longer mine. That truth stung, but it also freed me. I moved into a small cabin in Estes Park, a place Richard and I had once retreated to when the city felt too loud. The cabin overlooked a frozen lake, and at night, the stars spilled across the sky like spilled salt. It wasn't a mansion, but it was peace. One Saturday, Lily and Ben arrived, their laughter filling the quiet rooms. We worked together to mend an old rocking chair Richard had once built, the same chair that had splintered during the chaos of that terrible night. Our hands moved in rhythm, mine steady, theirs eager. Piece by piece, the chair took shape again, stronger than before. As the last nail slid into place, Lily looked up at me. "Grandma," she said softly, "do you miss it? The company? The house?" I pulled her close, her hair brushing my cheek. "What I miss," I told her, "is the family we used to be. But what I have now is better than any title or mansion. I have you, and I have peace." The rocking chair creaked gently as I lowered myself into it, the fire warming the room, the sound of the children's laughter echoing against the cabin walls. For the first time since that night, I felt whole. I didn't keep the throne. I kept the table. And that, in the end, was enough. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, Please subscribe and join me for more every day.